currently 45, but this happened in 1993, when I was 15. We'd just moved into a big house located on the edge of Waukewa Springs State Park. At the time, I'd heard of Bigfoot, but the stories didn't interest me. We couldn't put the trash out until right before the garbage trucks ran, or the black bears would tear it apart. The deer population was off the charts. Plus, we'd see wild turkeys, pigs, and bobcats. Our home was next to the lake, and the only other houses were at the front of the neighborhood. No one was living on either side of us yet. After school, I'd go into the woods just to explore. I noticed a good spot for growing marijuana, so I decided to try it out. I became very familiar with the square mile around our home, and I grew comfortable with staying out there until dusk. One day, while checking on my plant, I saw my 11-year-old brother exiting the patio door 50 yards behind me. He was trying to follow me into the woods, so I pretended not to see him. While walking, I occasionally heard him behind me and stopped just to make sure. As I got deeper into the forest, I noticed it was much calmer than normal. I didn't see any deer, squirrels, or birds. There wasn't even any wind blowing, but I could hear my brother getting closer. I thought it would be funny to scare him as he passed by, so I ducked behind a tree. While waiting, I realized what little sound there had been was now completely gone. It was like wearing earplugs, but I didn't yet understand what that meant. It was merely an observation. My brother was being loud, and when he sounded like he was about 20 feet away, I prepared to pounce. Except he never came. The footsteps suddenly stopped, and I was left just sitting behind the tree. 2 full minutes passed, and I was beginning to wonder what the hell happened. Did he realize what I was doing? Decided to scare me first? Finally, I looked around the corner, but I didn't see him anywhere. Only, that should have been impossible because I heard him following me the whole time, but I didn't hear him leave after hiding behind the tree. The only explanation would be if he'd literally disappeared. The woods suddenly seemed very creepy, and I started feeling anxious. My brain said, "Get home now," but I couldn't seem to get my bearings. I was lost. Eventually, I calmed down enough to find my way back to the trail, even though I never left it. The problem was my equilibrium or something. My brother was still nowhere to be found, and I was genuinely concerned. He'd been right behind me only a few minutes prior. I yelled his name while jogging home, and after a few minutes, I finally heard his voice. He was hiding under a pile of palmetto leaves behind the trail, just laying there. I didn't know why, but I told him to hurry because I still had that weird feeling. When he stood up, I tried to ask what he'd been doing, but he only asked me to run home with him. I didn't ask any more questions. We simply ran home. Once we made it to the backyard, he explained that he was following me when he suddenly smelled something horrible. Looking to the left, he saw a big, black, hairy person. I was already a little paranoid because of my marijuana plant, so my first thoughts were of the police. My brother then specified that the person's entire body was covered in hair. It scared him so badly that he simply stopped, fell to the ground, and rolled into the palmetto bushes until I found him. At the very moment he finished telling me his story, we heard 3 loud bangs and a weird scream. We both looked up, and there, about 50 yards behind us, was the thing that he had described. It was swinging from a large tree branch, and had I not known better, I would have thought that it looked like a human, pretending to be a monkey. It just didn't make sense. It was completely out of place. The creature was large and burly, but it still resembled a person more than anything else. We both remained frozen, not knowing what to do until the creature finally dropped to the ground and fled into the woods. It was hollering the whole time. The moment that it was out of sight, we ran into the house, yelling for our parents. At first, they said it was just a bear, but later that night, they realized we were serious. The next day, Dad found a report from Florida discussing something called a skunk ape. Over the next 5 years, I continued seeing the creature, and twice we'd had a deer leg and a skull left in our backyard. Once, I had turkey feathers placed on my windowsill. I didn't know what it meant at the time. I only learned about that later in my research. Every 6 months, park rangers left a barrel and a donut in our yard, hoping to capture any black bears that were too comfortable in our neighborhood. Eventually, I felt comfortable enough to ask one of the rangers what they did with the captured bears. Apparently, they're moved into deeper parts of the forest or relocated altogether. But then he said that that's not what I should be worried about. That there were bigger and badder things in those woods, and to always be careful. My parents still live in that same house today, and I visit them occasionally. Dad is retired now, and he's actually grown to be a believer himself. Over the years, he's had quite a few experiences of his own. The house is about 15 minutes from downtown Orlando, but the area is still surprisingly untouched by humans. I think our house was built on the creature's territory, and it was pushed back further as more homes were built. It's not as dangerous or thrilling as some encounter stories, but it was real. I saw that thing with my own eyes on more than one occasion, and now I'm just trying to learn all I can about it. For example, is a skunk ape different from Bigfoot? I don't know, but I look forward to finding out. I feel like now that I'm growing up, I'm starting to feel the gravity of many things that happen and have happened around me. Being a curious person, I like to investigate things, like to make my own theories around them. Yesterday morning, I started having this conversation with my mom about my theories on what dreams actually are and what science says about it. In the midst of that conversation, I suddenly recalled an incident that happened with her many years ago. My mom is not the type of person who likes to make things up. She's also so skeptical of superstitions. I, and only I, know that if she claims to have seen something with her own eyes, something which freaked her out and almost froze her to death, she's speaking the truth. It happened 12 years ago. My family was going through a financial crisis, and we used to live in my maternal grandmother's house back then. Recently, a thief had also been sighted in the house, who ran away in a panic because of the fear of being caught. Many scary things were happening, and we were damn serious toward all of them, as they were causing our family a lot of stress. I didn't get to know exactly when and how, but one evening, my mom told my grandma that she saw a hairy demon in the bathroom, and she almost froze to death seeing that. As I was a stupid 11-year-old kid back then, I took it as a funny horror story. I let it be. When I recalled this incident yesterday, I decided to ask about the details to my mom, so I asked her to explain what was the appearance of that thing, actually. She told me that it was sitting on the floor in our bathroom. She said that it looked like an early man. Told me it was so gigantic that when it stood up on its legs, he easily reached the ceiling. As she froze and started screaming for help to my dad, this creature took only a couple of very, very long strides and disappeared. She says she doesn't recall much details from how this thing actually disappeared. I asked her why she calls this thing a demon. She said that because that's what her first guess was. I asked, "So you mean it looked like a caveman?" She said, "No, it wasn't a man or human in the first place." "A beast?" I asked. She said yes. She said it had very long hair all over its body, that the hair had a soil-like color. Immediately my brain said, "Bigfoot?" Then I Googled Bigfoot and showed her the images. She said that it very much resembled the appearance in those images. I was shocked to hear that. The thing is, I'm from India. Nobody has ever heard of a Bigfoot in India, let alone in an urban environment. And that too, in one's bathroom. As weird and illogical as this incident sounds, it really happened. My mom rarely believes in things like these, and she's always very serious towards life. She's never been attention-seeking or something. This incident has never helped her in any way. In fact, she was facing so many more challenges in life that this incident was a fresh wound on already wounded skin. So, what do you guys think of this incident? How can one see a Bigfoot-like creature in one's own home, which then disappears and is never seen again? Could it be something else? Also, there's a little incident about how my grandma saw it too, around the same time. But I'll stop here